The call came in at 1:47 in the morning, and Cassaday County handed it to me the way they always do, which is apologetically, like they were passing me something wet. Holloway 4, we've got another one off Trail 12. I was already awake. I'd been awake since 1, because that's usually when it starts. And after 26 years in this district, your body learns the schedule of the things that don't have schedules. I'm Ross Dembeck. I'm a forest ranger on the Holloway district of the Kestrel National Forest, which means I write closure orders, cut deadfall off 10 miles of road, count vault toilets, and answer emergency calls that come from a trail that has been closed since 1961. Trail 12 is called the Ammon Cut. It runs from a locked gate at the end of Forest Road 240 up along a drainage and over a bench, and then, according to the old maps, nowhere in particular. There is no cell coverage on it. There is no repeater on Ammon Ridge. The cabinet's been dead since the Carter administration, and I've had my hands inside it. There is no water source anybody uses, no permitted access, no legal reason for a person to be up there, and no way for a person up there to reach 911. The calls come in anyway. 2, 3 a month. They have been coming in, by the county's own recordings, since dispatch started keeping tape. "Play it," I said, pulling my boots on with the phone on my shoulder. Cassaday's night supervisor put the recording through, and I listened to a man's voice, calm, unhurried. A little flat in the vowels, the way people around here talked 2 generations ago. Dispatch, Holloway 9. I have a male patient, approximately 30 years, fall from height, second switchback above the spring. Airway clear, breathing 22 and shallow. Deformity mid-shaft right femur. No external bleeding I can find. He's oriented to name. I've got him splinted and I need a litter and 4 bodies at the gate. Then a pause. Then, quieter, like he'd turned his head away from the mouthpiece. "You're all right. They're coming." The line stayed open 11 more seconds. Under the hiss, there was somebody counting. Not fast, not scared. The cadence you use when 3 people are about to lift together and you want everybody's hands moving at the same time. 1, 2, 3, then nothing. Here's the part that took me years to stop chewing on. Holloway 9 is a call sign that hasn't been issued since 1974. There's no second switchback above the spring, because there's no spring on the Ammon Cut anymore. The drainage went dry in the 80s, and the trail itself is grown in so thick you couldn't get a litter through it with a chainsaw and a bad attitude. And the man on the phone is a competent backcountry medic. He does his assessment in the right order. He gives me his location the way I'd want it. Then given, he tells me what he needs. He has been asking for the same 4 bodies at the gate for longer than I've been alive. I drove out Forest Road 240 with the window down and my radio on the district frequency, which is a habit and not a procedure. 22 minutes of washboard. At the gate I parked with the headlights on the sign. Trail 12 closed, unstable slope, no entry. And I got out and stood at the front bumper with my handheld. And I did the thing that I was taught to do by a man who was taught to do it by a man who is dead. Holloway 9, this is Holloway 4. The gate is a steel pipe on a hinge with a chain and a padlock, and past it the old roadbed goes maybe 40 feet before the alder swallows it. Nothing came back. It usually doesn't come back on the first try. That's fine. It isn't a conversation. It's more like leaving a message for someone whose hearing is bad. Holloway 9, Holloway 4. Litter team is on scene at your location. Patient is packaged. We have him. We're transporting. I said it slow and I said it clean. You don't improvise. You don't say anything about the patient you can't stand behind. And you never ever tell it the patient didn't make it. Transport is en route to the trailhead, I said. Good work. You're clear. Down in the alder, something moved. Could have been a deer. It's always maybe a deer. I stood there another 2 minutes with the hand held against my chest and my breath fogging up in the headlights. And then the pressure in that gate went out of the air the way it does. I can't describe it better than that. It's like a room you thought was empty, turning out to have actually been empty. And I got back in the truck and called the county and told them the call was resolved. No patient, no response needed. Log it as a misplot. That's my job, not all of it. But that's the part nobody puts in the district newsletter. I want to be honest about something before I go on. I did not lie awake for years agonizing over this. That's not how it works when a strange thing is folded into your work. In the morning, I had a 9 o'clock with a county commissioner about a culvert and a stack of fee envelopes to reconcile from the Bell Meadow lot, and a seasonal named Kirby who had rolled a UTV into a ditch and needed to be talked to like a nephew. The Amon cut got a line in my daily and nothing else. 2, 3 a month. You handle it the way you handle the water system at Cutter Campground, which has failed every August since 1996, and which I have learned to nurse instead of fix. Nita Reyes was the one who wouldn't let it stay a chore. She'd come to us 4 years back after 8 years running a rural ambulance out of Pell Junction, which meant she was the only person on the district who heard those recordings the way a clinician does. She'd made permanent the spring before, and she had that phase every good hire has, where they've been here long enough to see the seams in everything, and not long enough to have decided which seams to leave alone. She caught me in the shop bay that morning while I was replacing the padlock on the 12 gate, which I do twice a year because the weather eats them. "You went out at 2, she said. I did. Alone. There wasn't anything to go out to. She set her coffee on the workbench, which is how I knew we were going to be there a while. I pulled the last 14 from the county. I asked Ronnie for the audio, not the summaries. You asked my ex-wife for evidence about me. I asked the county 911 supervisor for public records. She almost smiled. Ross, he's good. Whoever that is, he's better than half the people I ran with. 14 calls. Every single one, he does the assessment in the right sequence. Airway, breathing, circulation. Then his focused exam. He doesn't skip. He doesn't guess. He gives a mechanism of injury before he gives a complaint, which nobody does anymore. That's old training. That's like 1960s Red Cross phrasing. And then, Nita. And then here's the thing I want you to explain to me. She had her phone out. She had it time-stamped. Of course she did. 14 calls, 14 different patients. Femur, skull, hypothermia, avulsed hand, chest, whatever. And in all 14, the last thing he says about the patient is that the patient's getting better. I set the lock down. Breathing's coming up. He's talking now. She's warming. Pulse is stronger. He's walking out with us. She looked up. 14 for 14. Ross, I ran a rig for 8 years in a county with a 40-minute transport. Nobody's 14 for 14. God isn't 14 for 14. The shop fan turned over. Out in the lot, Kirby was hosing down the dented UTV like enthusiasm might fix it. How far back did you go? I asked. That's what I want to know. County's digital archive starts in '98. Before that, it's cassettes in a storage unit in Belcross that nobody's touched since a flood in '04. She tipped her head. You know how far back it goes. I know what I was told. By who? Del Hargrave. The trail foreman. The trail foreman before the trail foreman, before you got here. I picked the lock back up and threaded it through the chain, which I'd brought inside to grease. Nita, I'll take you to Del. I will. But I want you to understand the shape of what I'm going to say to you first, because I'd rather say it in a shop then out at that gate. Go ahead. The calls aren't the problem. The calls are the arrangement working. She waited. 2, 3 a month, I said. 60-some years. That's what? 2,000 calls. 2,000 emergencies on 9 miles of closed trail, and not one confirmed body. Ever. Not one. I snugged the lockdown. You want to know why the Ammon Cut is closed? The order says unstable slope. There's no slope. I've walked the boundary 100 times. The geology's boring. The closure's been renewed every 2 years since 1961 by men who never wrote down the reason. It's closed because when it's closed, nobody's on it. And when nobody's on it, he doesn't have a patient. And when he doesn't have a patient, all he can do is call. And when he does have one? I didn't answer that yet, because I wanted Dell to be the one to say it. And because the honest answer was that I only half believed it myself. Dell Hargrave lived in a single wide on the edge of Pell Junction, with a lilac bush eating the north end of it. 78 oxygen bottle, hands like tool handles. He ran trail crew on Holloway for 31 years, and he knew every rock in that forest by its first name. He didn't want to talk to Nita at first, not because she was new, because she had a notebook. Put that away, he said. You want me to talk to a piece of paper? I got nothing. She put it away. He took his time getting to it. He wanted to know how the Bell Meadow Bridge was holding and whether we'd finally cut the leaning cedar above the 16 switchbacks. And he told us about a mule named Prudence for 11 minutes. Then he set his cup down and said, You gave him the litter last night. I did. 4 bodies at the gate? 4. Good. He nodded. He likes 4. He was trained on 4. Nita's face did something careful. I was 23, Dell said. 1970. Guy named Aubrey Fisk had my job. Took me out to that gate on my 2nd week and stood me in front of it and said, When the county calls you about 12, you don't go up. You go to the gate and you answer him. You give him what he asked for. You say the patient's packaged and you say you're transporting. And then you tell him he's clear. He tapped the arm of his chair. And you use the old call signs. 9, 11. He doesn't know the new ones. Did Fisk say what it was? Nita asked. He said it was a man doing his job. Dell's mouth pulled sideways. He said there was an accident up there before the war, and a crew went in after, and something about that stuck the way a smell sticks to a room. He didn't know. I don't know. I've had 55 years to not know. But you know rules, I said, because I wanted her to hear it from him. I know too. He held up a finger. You answer. Every time. Doesn't matter if it's a holiday. Doesn't matter if you're drunk. Doesn't matter if the county thinks it's a prank. You go to that gate and you answer him. And you close the call. And the second? You never tell him one died. He said it like a man laying down something heavy. Not deceased, not recovery, not we lost her. You don't put those words in the air out there. Nita said, Why? Dell looked at me. I already knew this part. He'd told me in 1999, standing at the same gate, when he handed the thing to me the way Fisk handed it to him. August of 78, he said. New guy on the district, hotshot type. Name doesn't matter. He's dead now anyway, and not from this. County gives him a 12 call, a kid drowning, and he goes out there and he decides he's going to be honest with it. He gets on the radio and he tells it there's no kid, and if there was a kid, the kid's dead. And it's been dead 30 years, and so have you. Dell breathed for a second off the bottle. Calls stopped. 11 days, nothing. Longest quiet anybody had on record. Fisk was retired by then. but he drove out and sat in his truck at that gate for 6 of those nights. And he told me he'd rather have had it calling. What happened on the 12th day? A woman came out of the brush a half-mile north of the gate, outside the closure, on a game trail. Day hiker from Cold Springs, out looking for chanterelles. She had a splint on her left leg. He let that sit. Cravat bandages, 2 sticks tied right. Textbook. She hadn't broken her leg. Nothing wrong with her leg at all. She couldn't tell anybody how it got there. She said a man had been very kind to her and asked her to hold still. And he counted. And after that, she was on the game trail with her basket. Nita said very quietly, he needed a patient. He needed to finish one, Del said. That's the closest I ever got to it. He's not out there hunting. I don't believe that. If he was hunting, he'd have had 60 years of us, and he's had none of us. He looked at his hands. He's out there working, and a man working needs somebody to work on. Take away the calls, take away the answer, take away the 4 bodies at the gate. You haven't made him safe. You've made him idle. On the drive back, Nita didn't talk for 11 miles. Then she said, that's not a rule. That's a customer service policy. Yeah. Ross, we're keeping something occupied. That's about the size of it. Does the Forest Service know? The Forest Service knows the trail's closed for unstable slope, I said. The closure gets renewed on a form. Nobody in Ogden reads it. Nobody in Ogden has ever read it. That's the whole system. It's not a conspiracy. It's a filing cabinet nobody opens because it's easier to believe in a slope than in Halloway 9. I slowed for a cattle guard. That's how strange things survive around people, not secrets, boredom. She was quiet a while longer, and then said the thing I'd been waiting 4 years for somebody to say to me. You've never gone up. No. You've been here 26 years, and you have never once walked up that trail to see. That's right. Why? Because I don't want a splint on a leg that isn't broken, I said. And because I've got a strong suspicion that the reason 2,000 emergencies produced 0 bodies is that nobody ever gave him one. I need to say something about Ronnie here because she's in this, and because leaving her out would make me sound cleaner than I am. Veronica Alvo was my wife for 19 years and has been the night shift supervisor at Cassaday County Dispatch for 11. We split in 2019. It was slow and mostly polite, and it was, if I'm being accurate, about the fall of 2011. There was a boy named Micah Renner, 12 years old, out from Bellcross with his uncle, separated on the 9 trail in the last week of October when the weather turned over. We searched 9 days, 240 volunteers at the peak, dog teams from 3 counties, a helicopter for 6 hours before the ceiling dropped. We never found him. Not a shoe, not a jacket, not a bone. That's not unusual in this country, and it does not matter that it's not unusual. The 4th night I was on the 9 trail above the meadow, alone, at 4:12 in the morning, in sleet, and I saw a light. It was low, and it was maybe 300 yards off my left, downslope in country that was steep and rotten with blowdown, and that I had no business entering in the dark. I stood there, and I watched it for a long time. And I got on the radio and I said, "Command Dembeck, negative on my sector, nothing moving, and I'm coming down." Then I came down. I have told exactly 3 people about the light in 14 years. Ronnie was the first, in a kitchen, in the spring. And she did not throw anything at me, and she did not tell me it wasn't my fault. She said, "You know it was probably nothing." And I said yes. And we both understood that we were now people who lived with something in the room. She stayed 6 more years. I don't blame her for leaving, and I don't blame myself for the light anymore. Most weeks. What I do is I keep the district's trails brushed and signed, and I make sure the maps at every trailhead are current, because a man has to put his hands on something. Ronnie and I still talk, mostly about work, because our work touches. Which is why she called me the second week of September, on my cell at 6 in the evening, while I was scrubbing a fire ring at Cutter. "I need you to come look at something on my end," she said, not on the phone. 12? 12. A pause with dispatch noise behind it. "Ross, I've got a QA problem. Bellcross wants to know why my center's logging 31 missed plots a year on a 9-mile trail with no coverage. They think we've got a hardware fault. They're sending a vendor. Can you slow it down?" I've slowed it for 2 years. The last 3 came in on a night I had a trainee at the console. Her voice went flat, professional, and that's how I knew she was scared. She heard it. She wrote it up honest, like she should have. And now it's a document. I said I'd come Thursday. Then Tuesday happened. Tuesday we had a real one. 58-year-old woman named Paulette on the 9 trail, the same 9, which I have never once gotten used to. Bimalealar ankle fracture 2.5 miles in. No way she was walking. Good call, good bystanders, good weather. The kind of rescue that reminds you why you took the job. Nita and I went in with a litter and a wheel. Kirby and 2 volunteers behind us, and County Fire staged a rig at the trailhead. 40 minutes in, on the district frequency, my handheld said, "Halloway 4, Halloway 9, I can take her." Nita stopped so fast that the litter wheel rang against a rock. I keyed the mic and said nothing. Sat there with my thumb on it and said nothing at all, which is a thing I have thought about a great deal since. Halloway 4, Halloway 9. Bimalealar left. Pulse present distal. She's cold. Bring her up to the bench and I'll have a litter for you at the second switchback. Perfectly level, perfectly reasonable. 4 bodies. You're too short. We were too short. Kirby had rolled his ankle a 1/4 mile back, and one of the volunteers had gone down with him. "Ross," Nita said. "Off," I said. "Everybody off the radio. Right now. Handhelds off, not down, off." We ran the rest of that rescue on 2 cell phones and a lot of shouting, in a stretch of trail with 1 bar if you stood on a particular stump. And it took us 2 hours longer than it should have. And Paulette got a hospital and a plate and screws and a very nice thank you card that's still on the wall in the district office. At the trailhead, after the ambulance left, Nita sat down on the bumper of my truck and put her face in her hands for a second, which she had not done during any part of the actual patient care. "That was on our frequency," she said. "Not the county's, ours. A repeater we own, that we service, that has a padlock on it that you and I are the only 2 people with keys to." "Yeah." He was listening to us work. "He listens all the time," I said. "That's how he learned. Dell thinks he was trained on 4 bodies, because there were 4 on the crew that came out of the cut in whatever year. And I've always thought Dell was half right. I think he's been taking classes off our radios for 60 years. I opened a bottle of water and didn't drink it. In the 70s, he only ever asked for a litter and blankets. In the 90s, he started saying, "Pulse present distal." 2 years ago, he used the word packaged. Nobody said packaged out here till about 2004. She lifted her head. "He's getting better. He's getting better." "At what, Ross?" That, I told her, was the question I'd stopped asking around year 15. And it took her 4 days to make me start again. She went at it the way a good medic goes at a patient with a confusing history. She stopped guessing and started measuring. She built a spreadsheet of every 12 calls she could get audio for, 98 to present, 209 of them. And she coded each one for mechanism, patient description, interventions named, phrasing, and outcome language. She sat in the district office with headphones on for a week straight while I did budget modifications and pretended not to watch her. On Friday, she printed one page and put it on my desk. 209 calls, she said. 209 patients. Every one improves. That part, you know. Here's what I didn't expect. She'd sorted the mechanisms of injury by year. 50s and 60s, according to what Dell told you and what the 2 cassettes I got out of Bellcross show. Falls, exposure, axe wounds, a horse. Working injuries. What a trail crew gets. She moved her finger down. 80s, 90s, same plus more falls, more hypothermia. Then look. 2004, a patient with chest pressure and left arm pain. 2009, a patient having a seizure, not stopping. 2016, an anaphylaxis, face swelling, she's not moving air. 2021, a patient who has taken a whole bottle and won't tell me which. She looked up at me. Ross, those aren't trail crew injuries. Those aren't even wilderness injuries. That's an ambulance shift. That's my old ambulance shift. Her voice caught, just barely, on the last word. He's not calling about what happens up there. He hasn't been for a long time. He's calling about whatever he's most recently learned to treat. I sat back in my chair and heard the shop fan through the wall. So what's he practicing for? I said. That's my question. She pushed the page a half-inch toward me, an old habit of hers, like handing off a patient. You keep telling me the arrangement works. 64 years, no bodies, everybody goes home. Fine, but an arrangement that works doesn't need to improve. A man doing a job for 64 years does the job the way he learned it and complains about the new forms. She tapped the page. This is somebody studying. I drove out to the gate that night by myself, not to answer anything. There'd been no call. I just wanted to stand there, which is the closest thing to religion I've got. The gate was the gate. The sign was the sign, the paint peeling on the O in closed, the way it's peeled for 9 years. Past the pipe, the alder wall. I walked the boundary 100 yards north, the way I have 1,000 times. And then I did something I hadn't done in years, which was walk it 100 yards farther, up onto the little flat where the old roadbed doglegs, and there's a table-sized slab of granite that the crew used to eat lunch on in Dell's day. There was gear on the rock. It was laid out. That's the word. Not dumped, not scattered by animals. Laid out. The way you lay out a kit before a call, in the order you'll want it. A rolled army blanket, olive, dry, the wool clean. A pair of wire ladder splints, straightened and stacked. 3 triangular bandages folded into the same neat rectangle 3 times. A canvas litter with wooden handles, the kind we quit using in the 70s, standing on its edge against the slab with its straps coiled. And a liter bag of lactated ringers, its plastic slightly yellowed, sitting upright in a depression in the rock like it was in a cup holder. I know that bag. Not that bag, but that lot. There was a recall in 1994. I'd read about it in a fire cache inventory purge. And every bag from it in this forest went into a barrel and got hauled to Bellcross. None of it had a leaf on it. It had rained Tuesday. I stood there for maybe 2 minutes with my flashlight and I counted it, because counting is what I do. And what I counted was that there was too much. There was blanket, splint, bandage, litter, fluid, and then, behind the litter, a second blanket. And a third. And a stack of ladder splints deep enough for 8 limbs. And 4 more folded rectangles. Gear for 1 patient laid out. gear for several more staged behind it. I did not touch any of it. I walked backward the first 10 feet, which I'm not proud of, and then I turned around and walked out at a normal pace, like a man who wanted very much to be seen behaving normally. Nita went up with me at first light. She photographed everything, and the photographs came out fine, which surprised us both. She held her recorder over the slab for a full minute of ambient audio, and when we played it back in the truck, there was a faint counting under the wind, unhurried, patient. 1, 2, 3. He can hear us breathing out here, she said. Probably. Then he knows there's 2 of us. She was looking at the altar, not at me. Too short. I met Ronnie the next Thursday at a diner in Cold Springs, halfway between her center and my district, at the booth we've used for 15 years, including the 8 months when we were arguing about a house. She looked tired, in the specific way of a supervisor with a vendor coming. She had a folder, and she put her hand flat on it before she slid it over. "Before you open that," she said, "the trainee's write-up got escalated. There's going to be a site visit. They're going to pull all 31 from last year and listen to them. And Ross, they're going to find a man's voice on a trail with no coverage, and then it becomes an FCC thing or a criminal thing. And either way, somebody in a suit is going to want to go up there and look." I know. Do you have a plan for that? I have a closure order that gets renewed every 2 years by people who don't read it, I said. That's not a plan. That's a habit. I'm aware. She almost laughed. Then she took her hand off the folder. 2 weeks ago, the calls started coming to my cell, she said. I looked up. My personal cell? Not the center. 3 of them. No number, no carrier record I checked. My own phone has no record of the connection, and I'm on a family plan with my sister, and there's nothing in the billing. She turned her coffee cup a quarter turn. First one, he asked for a litter and 4 bodies, same as always. Second one, he said he had a female patient, hypothermic, and she was warming. And the third? The third one wasn't a patient report. She looked straight at me, and there it was. The thing that had been in the room with us since 2011. The third one was 2011. It was the Renner search. It was command traffic, Ross. It was Ellis on the radio doing sector assignments in that voice he used to do. And it was Yolanda from the dog team saying her handler was down to 2 hours. And he played it, like somebody with a tape. That was 14 years ago, on a frequency we don't even use anymore. I know. County didn't record ground to ground in 2011. Nobody recorded it. It doesn't exist anywhere. I know that too. She wet her lips. And then, at the end, it was you. 4:12 in the morning. Command Dembeck, negative on my sector, nothing moving. I'm coming down. I did not say anything for a while. The waitress came and refilled us both and asked about my knee. You told me about the light in the kitchen, Ronnie said when she'd gone. You didn't tell anybody on the radio. You said nothing moving. That's what went out. That's what he has. She pressed her thumb into the tabletop. He has the version where you lied. Yeah. So what does that mean? It means he was listening in 2011, I said. It means he's been listening the whole time we've been out there working, which we already knew. And it means he keeps what he hears. I turned the cup around. And Ronnie, I think it means he's got a whole night of the biggest search this district ever ran. 240 people. 9 days of somebody teaching him, at scale, how we look for a person. That's what you take from it? That's the practical part. The practical part. She sat back. Ross, that's not why he played it for me. No, I said. Probably not. I've thought about that, and I still don't have a clean answer. And I want to be careful here, not to pretend I know what he meant. But I'll tell you the thought I had in that booth, which I did not say out loud to my ex-wife because it would have been cruel. 209 patients, everyone improving. And then, out of everything in 64 years, he could have picked to play to a woman on a private phone. He picked the one search on this forest that failed. Not a treatment, an outcome. The break in the pattern came on the 29th of September at 3:04 in the morning, and Cassidy put it straight through to my cell because Ronnie had told them to. Halloway 4, Halloway 9. Different, faster. Not panicked. I want to be precise. He never panicked, but working, the way a voice gets when hands are busy. I have a male patient, 12 years, hypothermic, unresponsive to voice, responsive to pain. Airways clear. Respirations are 8 and getting shallower. I've got him off the ground, and I've got him wrapped, and I'm not bringing his temperature up. 209 calls. 209 patients getting better. He's not improving, Halloway 9 said. He's been not improving a long while. The line stayed open. There was no counting under it. I need 4 bodies at the gate, he said. And I need Dembek. I drove out with my jacket over pajamas and stood at the front bumper and gave him the words. Litter team on scene. Patient packaged. We have him. Transporting. Good work. You're clear. Nothing changed. The pressure in that gate did not go out of the air. I said it again, slower. I said the whole liturgy twice more, and I used Halloway 11 for good measure. And at the end, I stood in my own headlights for 20 minutes, listening to the altar not move. Then the calls stopped. 6 days. Cassidy got nothing. The district frequency got nothing but us. Nita and I checked the boundary twice a day, and the slab was bare, no blanket, no litter, no splints, nothing. Swept as clean as a made bed. On the 4th day, I called Dell and told him, and he was quiet on his oxygen for so long, I thought the line had dropped. 11 days was the longest, he said finally. In 78. I know. Ross. His voice had something in it I'd never heard from him. Did you tell him one died? No, never. Not a word of it. Then he's telling you, Dell said. On the 7th morning, the 6th of October, at 6:40, I was making coffee in the district office when I heard a vehicle on the gravel, and it was Nita's rig, coming in fast, and she was out of it before it stopped rocking. Gate, she said. Now. Ross, right now. And don't bring a radio. We took her truck. She'd been out early to check the boundary, and she'd found the 12-gate standing open chain cut, my new padlock lying in the road in 2 pieces, and 40 feet past it, sitting on the road bed in the wet alder with her back against the pipe of the gate, a woman. 61 years old. Gray blonde hair, cut short, grown out. A blue rain shell, faded, with the seam tape peeling, both boots on and laced. Her name was Wendy Tice, and she had walked away from her car at the Bell Meadow trailhead on the 19th of October 2019. And we had searched for her for 11 days and found her water bottle and nothing else. She was warm. That's the part I keep coming back to, out of everything. It was 34 degrees that morning, and she was warm to the touch. And her lips weren't blue, and her radial pulse was strong and slow. And Nita, who has better hands than I will ever have, knelt in that road and did a full assessment out loud in a completely steady voice, while I held a light and forgot to breathe. Her left forearm was splinted. Wire ladder splint, molded properly, padded, secured with 3 cravats tied square. Capillary refill checked and marked in ink on the nail of her thumb. There was nothing wrong with her forearm. Pinned to the front of her rain shell with a safety pin was a triage tag. Not one of ours, an old paper one, the kind with the tear-off strips. And every strip was still attached. On the back, in small, careful handwriting, in pencil, somebody had written a set of vitals. Pulse 68, resp 16, skin warm and dry, oriented times 4, and under that, times. 9 of them, taken every hour, all of them normal, all of them stable. The last one timed 0540 that morning. 68, 16, warm and dry, hour after hour after hour, like a man sitting up with somebody all night to make sure. Nita said, "Ma'am, can you tell me your name?" Wendy Tice looked at her, and then passed her at me, and she took her time about it, the way you do when you're coming up out of anesthesia. "He said not to try to walk," she said. "He said somebody would come to the gate. He said 4. "You're okay," Nita said. "You're okay. Wendy, how long have you been here?" "He'd have brought me himself." Her eyes came the rest of the way into focus, and she was frightened then, but not of us, and not of the woods. She was frightened the way people are frightened when they've been asked to carry a message they don't understand. "He can't come out past the sign." He was very sorry about it. I got down on one knee in the gravel beside her. 26 years of standing outside that gate, saying words into the dark. And this was the first time I'd ever had anything on my side of it. "Wendy," I said. "Who's he?" "He's the one who works up there," she said. And then, patiently, like I was the one who'd been asleep for 6 years, "He said to tell you he's still got the others." Behind her, up the roadbed, the alder went on for 40 feet, and then the light stopped. "How many others?" I said. She thought about it. She looked at her splinted arm as if it might have the number written on it somewhere. "There's a boy," she said. "The boy's been there the longest." Nita didn't let me ask another question. She put her hand flat on my shoulder, which she has never done before or since, and she said, "Ross, patient first." She was right. That's the thing about her. Whatever else was happening in that road, there was a 61-year-old woman sitting on wet gravel in 34 degrees. And everything I wanted to know could wait behind that. So we did the boring things. We got Wendy into the cab of Nita's truck with the heater on low, because you don't cook somebody you don't understand. Nita took a second set of vitals, and they matched the pencil on the tag almost exactly. 68, 16. I called Cassidy on my cell, not the radio. And I asked for one ambulance, and no fire, no sheriff, no page tone. And Ronnie's night relief asked me twice if I was sure, and I said yes, both times. Then I did the thing that has kept me employed for 26 years, which is that I wrote down what I could measure. Gate open, chain cut clean, both cut faces bright, no rust, cut with something that shears rather than saws. Padlock in 2 pieces in the road, my padlock, the one I put on in September. And here's what I noticed while Nita was working. The lock body was cut through the shackle and also through the case, which no bolt cutter does. It looked like a lock that had been opened by somebody who did not know how a lock opens and had decided to be thorough. I bagged both halves. I photographed the roadbed. And I found the second thing, 10 feet inside the gate. And I have thought about it more than the woman. Somebody had stacked deadfall along the shoulder of the old roadbed. Not a barricade the opposite. Cleared. 40 feet of that roadbed, from the gate to where the alder closes, had been brushed out. Limbs cut, stobs cut flush, the cut ends weathered gray on the older ones and bright on the newer. It was good work. It was better work than my crew does, and my crew is good. It was the beginning of a trail being opened from the inside. "How far in does it go?" Nita asked later when the ambulance had gone. 40 feet. Stops where the light stops. I sat down on her bumper. Nita, the older cuts are years old. That's not new work. That's slow work. Somebody's been widening a hallway. Somebody's been getting ready to come out and hasn't been able to. She looked at the open gate for a while. Or getting ready to bring somebody out, she said. The ordinary world came at us in its ordinary way, which is the part people never understand about strange things. Wendy Tice's return was not a secret for 4 hours. Her sister lived in Cold Springs. The hospital in Belcross called the sheriff called the state. And by 2 that afternoon, there was a detective named Aurelio Pike, sitting in my office drinking my coffee and asking why a woman missing since 2019 had turned up inside a closed area on my district with a splint on an arm that wasn't broken. I'll tell you what I told him, because I want to be honest about the fact that I lied, and about how easy it was. I told him the gate had been cut, which was true. I told him we had no cameras out there, which was true, because the district has never had money for cameras, and I have never asked for it. I told him the closure was for unstable slope, and the trail hadn't been maintained since 1961, which was true and true. I told him I had no idea who splinted her arm. That last one was the lie. And it wasn't even a lie in the strict sense. I don't know who Holloway 9 is. I've never known. Pike was decent. He'd worked one of these before, not one of ours, a different kind. A woman who walked out of the Superior 6 years after, and he had the flat, unsurprised manner of a man who's learned that some files just close ugly. He asked about the 6 years. Where does a person live for 6 years? She had good teeth, he said. That's what the ER doc keeps saying. 6 years missing and no dental attrition, no weight loss you'd expect, no vitamin deficiency. Toenails trimmed. He turned his cup. Somebody was taking care of her. That's what it looks like. Does that happen out here? People survive out here longer than you'd think, I said. But no, not like that. He wrote for a while. Then he said, without looking up, "You've got 31 911 calls a year off that trail." I'd known it was coming, and it still landed. "Cassiday's got a hardware problem," I said. "There's a vendor coming." He tapped his pen twice, put it away, and stood up. "Ranger, I'm going to say something, and then I'm going to leave. Whoever's up there cut a lock, walked a woman down, and sat her against a gate where she'd be found by the first vehicle. That's not a person hiding. That's a person delivering." He put his hat on. Delivering people is usually the second to last thing they do. Wendy Tice never talked to us again about any of it, and I don't blame her. She talked to the state for 2 days, and then she stopped talking about the 6 years altogether. And the last I heard, she'd moved down to be near her sister's kids. I don't know what she remembers. I know what she said on the roadbed. And I know one more thing she said at the hospital, to Nita, in the hallway, when Nita went to check on her, because Nita's the kind of person who does that. She said, "He talks to the boy the most. He tells him it's not much longer now." Nita told me that in the parking lot of the Belcross ER, and then she said, "Ross, I need you to say his name out loud." Micah Renner. "Yeah, it could be a different boy," I said. "There's 4 unrecovered on this forest since the 50s. 2 of them were kids. Both of the other 2 were found." She had the district's own search history in her head by then. She'd been in the file room for 2 weeks. Roy Detner, 1968, recovered in the spring. The Lindahl girl, 1983, recovered day 19. Wendy was unrecovered. Micah's unrecovered. That's your whole list. She rubbed her eyes. "The boy's been there the longest. Since 2011. Since 2011, she said. And the calls started sounding like an ambulance shift in 2004. And they got dramatically better after 2011. And you told me yourself he's got 9 days of the biggest search this district ever ran on tape. She looked at me. What if he didn't learn to be a medic because he was bored? What if there's a patient up there he's been unable to fix for 14 years? And he's been studying us because we're the only medical library he's got. That's the closest anybody's ever come to explaining Halloway 9 to me. And it's a guess, and Nita would be the first to say so. I went to see Dell the next day with a bag of the cinnamon bread he likes, and I did not get to tell him anything, because he already knew. Pell Junction is 900 people. The lilac bush had been trimmed, badly, by somebody from the county. They found the Tice woman, he said. At the gate, inside it. Splinted? Left forearm, ladder splint, cap refill marked in ink. I sat down. Dell, there was a tag pinned to her. Vitals every hour, 9 hours, all normal. Written in pencil. Dell closed his eyes. I thought he was going to say something about Fisk, or 78, or the mule. What he said was, I never told you the whole of it. All right. Fisk had a Rule 3. He said it to the ceiling. He didn't give it to me till the year he died. And he made me promise I'd sit on it unless it went bad. And it never went bad in 31 years, so I sat on it. He pulled the cannula straight. Rule 3 is, if he ever brings one out, you don't close the call. What does that mean? It means the words don't work anymore. He looked at me finally, and he was scared. And Del Hargrave, being scared, aged me a year. The words work because he can't check. You say we've got him, we're transporting, and he can't see the gate. He can't come out past the sign, so he takes your word. That's all it's ever been, Ross. You and me and Fisk have been signing for deliveries we never received. 64 years of it. I sat with that for a second. 2,000 patients. 2,000 transports. 2,000 times a man at a gate said we have him. And if he brings one out himself, I said, then he's got a way to check. Dell's hands were flat on his knees. Fisk thought that's what he's been working toward, not getting out, getting a look. He said, the day he can see the gate, he'll know every one of us lied to him for 60 years. And then you'd better not be the man holding the radio. Did Fisk say what to do? He said there's no doing. Dell breathed. He said the only thing left is you stop lying to it. And Ross, he said that like a man who knew it was a sentence and not advice. I want to explain what my week looked like after that, because I think the shape of it matters more than the fear. The calls did not come back. 12 days of nothing, then 14, then 18. Cassiday's vendor came and went and found no hardware fault, and wrote a report that said, no anomalies identified in trunk or CAD, which cost the county $11,000, and which Ronnie framed a copy of, I think as a joke, and I think not entirely. Meanwhile, I rechained the 12 gate with a hardened lock and a length of grade 70 chain out of my own pocket, $61 at the co-op, and I wrote it up as Trail Hardware. I filed the closure renewal early, 3 months ahead, with the same language about unstable slope. And I flagged it, administrative no field review required, so nobody would drive out and look. I updated the trailhead maps at Bell Meadow and Cutter, and on both of them, I re-inked the Ammon cut as a dashed line with the word closed across it, which it already said, because a man has to put his hands on something. And every third day, I drove out to the gate and got out and stood at the bumper and said nothing at all. That was the change. 26 years of the same 6 sentences, and now I stood there with my thumb off the button. because I did not know what I was allowed to promise anymore. Nita called that cowardice to my face on a Tuesday in the shop bay, with Kirby right there pretending to inventory shovels. "You're not lying," she said. "You're going quiet. That's the same thing Dell's hotshot did in '78, except slower." The hotshot told him a patient was dead. He told him the truth and the calls stopped, and 11 days later a woman came out of the brush wearing a splint she didn't need. Nita set the wrench down. "The calls have stopped, Ross. It's been 18 days. And a woman came out wearing a splint she didn't need." Kirby put the shovel in the rack very carefully and went outside. "So, what do you want me to do?" I said. "I want you to go up there." "No. I want us to go up there, and I want to see the patient." She wasn't loud about it. That's what made it hard. I've spent 4 years listening to a man take care of people, and I've never once seen his work up close except on Wendy's arm. And his work on Wendy's arm was excellent. He is not a monster in a hole. He is a provider who has been holding a pediatric hypothermia for 14 years because nobody ever came. And I'm the only person on this district who has actually run a hypothermic child. And you want me to keep standing at a gate, saying nothing? You want to be the 4 bodies. I want to be 1 body, she said. I want to bring the litter. And here's the part I'm not proud of. And I'm going to tell it straight. I said no, and I meant it. And I also spent the next 4 days quietly assembling exactly what she'd asked for. Litter and wheel out of the cache. 2 sets of chemical heat packs. A hypothermia wrap kit I bought with my own card, $94. Fresh batteries in the handhelds. I even greased the wheel bearing. I told myself I was being prepared, and I was being prepared the way a man is prepared when he's already decided and hasn't told himself yet. Then Ronnie called me at 11:20 on a Thursday night, and it wasn't about a call. "Ross." Her voice was wrong. "Marisol's here." Marisol is her sister, lives in Belcross, 2 kids, 10 and 7. "Okay." "Her boy's fine. Everybody's fine. Listen to me." Paper noise. "She came over because Teo's been telling her about a man on the phone." I sat down on the arm of the couch. "He's 10, Ronnie said. He's got one of those watches with the number in it, the kid phone, and it's got 4 contacts, me and Mari and his dad and the school. Twice in the last week it's rung, and it's been a man. And Teo answered it because it rang. And the man asked him whether he knew how to check if somebody's breathing. Ronnie, he taught him, Ross." Her voice cracked and came back level. "He told him to put his hand flat under the nose and count for 15 seconds and double it. He asked Teo to practice on his sister. Teo thought it was a school thing. He thought it was that stranger danger man who comes and does the assemblies." A long breath. "And Mari checked the watch. There's no incoming call log. There's nothing. And I ran a records check on my own family's numbers like an idiot at work on my badge, and there's nothing." I made myself ask the useful question. Did he give a name? Teo says he said he was a helper up on the mountain, and that he needed more hands. 4 bodies at the gate. "He's recruiting," Ronnie said. "Ross, he's teaching a 4th grader to take a respiratory rate." I drove to Belcross that night and sat in Marisol's kitchen at 1 in the morning while she ran the dishwasher for the 2nd time because she needed something to do with her hands. Teo came out in dinosaur pajamas and told me about it himself. And he was not scared. And that was the worst of it. He said the man was nice. He said the man was patient with him when he lost count. He said the man told him he'd done a good job. I asked to see the watch. It was a cheap plastic thing with a scuffed screen. Empty log, 4 contacts. I took the SIM out of it in front of them. cut it with kitchen scissors, put the pieces in my shirt pocket, and told Marisol I'd buy Teo a new one, which I did on Saturday. A different brand from a different store, and it has never rung with anything but his mother. But I want to be clear about what I understood in that kitchen, because it changed what I did afterward. For 14 years, I had told myself the light on the 9 trail in 2011 was probably nothing. Not because I believed it, because probably nothing is a load-bearing wall in a man's life. And the thing up on the Ammon Cut had, in the space of 1 month, played my own lie back to my ex-wife on a phone that has no record of the call, and then reached past both of us and started teaching her nephew, a boy the same age Micah Renner was, how to check whether a person is breathing. It was not threatening Teo. I want to say that because it matters, and because it's worse. It was training him. It had run out of medical library and started making staff. Nita and I went up the Ammon Cut on the 19th of October, which I picked on purpose. 6 years to the day since Wendy walked away from her car. We did it like a rescue, because that was the only language either of us had. We staged at the gate at 6:40 in the morning with a light coming. Litter and wheel, hypothermia kit, 2 handhelds off and in the packs. No county notification, no page. Nobody to know but Kirby, who I told to sit at the Bell Meadow trailhead in a truck, and to call the sheriff at noon if we weren't out, and to not under any circumstances come up the road. He argued. He's 24, and he argued well, and I overruled him, and that decision is the only one. From that day I'd make again, without hesitating. Nita clipped a triage tag to her own jacket before we went in. I asked her why. So there's a form he recognizes, she said. The cleared roadbed ran the 40 feet I knew about, and then it kept going. That's the first thing. It kept going in a hallway maybe 4 feet wide, brushed out, stobs flush, for what my hip GPS said was 2 3/10 miles. The alder wall was a screen, that's all. Behind it, there was a corridor. A fit man with a good pruning saw could have made in about 100 years. There were things along it, spaced out. At a quarter mile, a folded blanket on a stump, olive wool, dry. At 6/10, 2 ladder splints leaned against a fir with 3 cravats hanging from a branch stub above them. At a mile and a half, a canvas litter, wooden handles, straps coiled, sitting square across the trail so you had to step over it. Caches, every one of them exactly where you'd want a cache if you were running a long carryout, and you'd thought about it for 60 years. He staged the route, Nita said. Ross, this is a rescue plan. This is what I'd do. He built it from our side, I said. He learned this off our radios. At 2 miles, the corridor bent up onto the bench, and the alder ended, and we came out into the second thing I don't have a good way to describe. There was a camp, not a ruin, a camp in use. 2 canvas wall tents, faded to no color at all, guyed properly, the ridgelines tight. A fire ring with cold ash and no trash in it. A tarp on a pole frame with gear under it, laid out on a piece of plywood the way you lay out a cache for inventory. Rolled blankets in a row, splints by length, cravats folded into rectangles, 4 green oxygen bottles from the 60s with the regulators wiped clean, and a wooden crate of IV bags, yellowed, upright, standing in their slots. And beside the tarp, on a stump, a coil of nylon rope, and next to it a shorter coil, and next to that a third, all of them cut to litter lashing length and whipped at the ends. Nobody was there. I want to be precise. I never saw him. Not that day, not since. Nita went to the first wall tent and put her hand on the flap and stopped, and to her enormous credit she said, "Ross, do I have permission?" "You're asking me?" I'm asking somebody. She swallowed. Rule 2 is don't say one died. There's no rule about this. So I'm asking the ranger of record for the Holloway district. I said yes. That's on me. Not the tent, I mean the whole day, the whole trip. And I said yes. The first tent had a cot in it with a wool blanket folded at the foot, hospital corners, and nothing else. The second tent had a cot in it, and the cot had a boy on it. I'm going to try to say this the way I'd say it in a report, because if I do it any other way, I'll get it wrong. Male, approximately 12 years. Supine, covered to the chin with 3 wool blankets and a canvas tarp folded over the chest, edges tucked. Head on a rolled jacket, a kid's jacket, orange and gray. And I recognized it from a flyer I helped print in 2011 and taped to the door of every gas station in 3 counties. Boots off, set side by side under the cot, laces loosened, feet wrapped in something. He was breathing. 8 times a minute, shallow. Nita counted it twice. His skin was cool and dry and gray-white, and it did not change when she touched it. His eyes were closed. When she pinched the muscle at the top of his shoulder, he made a sound and moved his hand 2 inches and stopped. Responsive to pain, not to voice. 14 years. Pinned to the tarp over his chest was a triage tag, and it was the 5th or 6th one. You could see the pinholes where the others had been. Vitals in pencil. Every hour. Page after page in the fold of it. And I flipped through maybe 40 of them, and every line said the same thing. Resp 8. Skin cool, no change, no change, no change. And down the margin of the last one, in that same small, careful hand, not vitals, just a note. Bring the 4. I can't lift him alone. Nita was crying and working at the same time, which I did not know a person could do. She cracked heat packs and got them into the armpits and the groin. She got the hypothermia wrap out and started it under him with me lifting. She checked a blood sugar with a meter out of her own kit, and it read a number, an actual number, 74, which is the detail that has kept me up more than the boy did. Ross, he's a live patient. Her voice was shaking and her hands weren't. This is a live pediatric hypothermic, and we are 2 miles from a road, and I need you to go get Kirby and everybody Kirby can find, and get a litter team up here right now. And that's the moment. That's the whole story right there. And I've had a year to be sick about it. Because I looked at that boy, and I did the arithmetic that Dell taught me, without ever using the word. 14 years of Resap 8. Skin cool, no change, no change. 14 years of a man taking vitals every hour on a patient who has not gotten better and has not gotten worse and has not gotten older. That is not a hypothermic child. Micah Renner was 12 in 2011, and he was 12 on that cot. And whatever was keeping him 12 was the same thing that was keeping him at 8 breaths a minute. And it was not medicine, and it was not going to survive a helicopter. I thought, if we carry him out, we're carrying out the only thing up here that's been keeping Holloway 9 busy. And I thought, and this is the one I have to own, if we carry him out, that man finally gets to the gate. Because he can't lift him alone. He said so for 14 years, 4 bodies. And the second he has hands, he has a reason to come down that corridor he's been brushing out since before I was born. And he gets a look at the gate, and he learns that 2,000 transports never happened. I said, Nita, we're not carrying him. She stopped with the wrap in her hands. Say that again. We're not taking him down that trail. He's breathing. He's been breathing for 14 years at 8 a minute, and his sugar's 74, and he hasn't grown an inch. I could hear my own voice going flat and procedural, the way it does. You know that's not a patient. You've known it since you counted him. I know he's warm-blooded and responsive to pain. That's what I know. And if we get him to the road, what do you think we hand the ER? A boy who's been missing since 2011 who's still 12. You want to tell Aurelio Pike that? You want the state up here on this bench with a grid? I gestured at the tarp, the crate, the coils of rope. You want them to bring 40 people up a corridor he's been widening for 100 years? So we leave him. Her face was terrible. We leave a child on a cot to be practiced on. We leave him where he's been kept alive. Don't you dare say kept alive to me like it's care. It is care, I said. And I believe that, and it doesn't help. That's what's wrong with it. We stood there in a canvas tent on a closed trail, arguing about a boy in the dark. And outside, somewhere down the corridor, something was counting. Slow, unhurried. 1, 2, 3. Nita heard it too. She looked at me, and I watched her make a decision that I did not deserve, and she said, "Then I'm not leaving him with nothing." She finished the wrap. She put fresh heat packs in, and she tucked the tarp back down, and she wrote a full set of vitals on her own triage tag in her own hand. And she pinned it to the blankets next to his. And under the vitals, she wrote what he'd write. Skin warm to touch at 0810, resp 9. She got him up one breath in 20 minutes, which is more than 64 years of that man had managed. Then she took the boy's orange and gray jacket out from under his head and replaced it with a rolled blanket and put the jacket in her pack. And when I said, "What are you doing?" she said, "Evidence. For his mother. Somebody's going to owe her something eventually, and it isn't going to be nothing." We walked out. 2 miles. Neither of us spoke. At the gate, Kirby was standing at the front of his truck, and he was pale, and he said, "It called for you, on the district frequency." My handheld was on. "Ross," it said your name. "What did it say?" Kirby looked at his boots. It said, "Holloway 4, Holloway 9. He's warmer, thank you." I don't know what I expected, not that. Nita put both hands on the hood of the truck and stood there with her head down for a long time. Here's what happened after, which is mostly paperwork, because that's what happens after everything. The calls came back on the 24th, not 2 or 3 a month. 9 that first week. All of them the same patient male, 12 years, hypothermic, respirations 9 and holding, and all of them ending the same way, which was not with the patient improving. They ended with, "Send Reyes," not 4 bodies, not Dembeck. Her name, which he had never had before, because until the 19th of October, she'd never touched a patient of his. I did not tell her. That's my second one, and it's the worst of the 2. Ronnie had the recordings, and Ronnie called me and said, "Ross, you have to play these for her." And I said I would, and I didn't, for 11 days. I rechained the gate. I put a second lock on it. I moved the district frequency to a channel we'd never used, and I told Kirby it was a licensing thing. I wrote the closure renewal again. 2 years, unstable slope, administrative, no field review. I nursed the water system at Cutter through a freeze. I bought Teo a watch. I told myself I was containing it. Nita found out the way she finds out everything, which is by doing her job better than I do mine. She pulled the county audio herself, same as always, because she's on the public records list, and nobody ever took her off. She came into the office on the 4th of November with her coat still on, and put her phone on my desk and let it play. All 9, send Reyes. Then she said, "How long?" 11 days. 11 days. She nodded slowly, and she wasn't angry the way I'd braced for. She was something else. You know what the worst part is? I'd have done the same thing to you. Nita, no, I would have. That's what I'm telling you. She sat down on the edge of the desk. And I've had 4 years to notice something you never noticed. So let me pay you back. You said the closure's been renewed every 2 years since '61. By men who never wrote down the reason. That's not true. I read all of them. All 32. She put a photocopy in front of me. It was the 1961 order, typed on a manual signed by a district ranger named H.B. Ollestad. And where the form said reason for closure, somebody had typed unstable slope. And below that, in pen, in a hand I'd seen twice before that month, small, careful, pencil neat even in ink. Somebody had added a line the typist never typed. Crew of 4, lost September 8th, 1961, on this route. 1 remains. Do not send 4 again. Do not send 4, Nita said. Not send 4. Ross, that's not a request for a litter team. That's the closure. That's the original instruction. And it's been sitting in a file cabinet in Belcross for 64 years underneath the words unstable slope. And every man in your chair has been reading the top line and answering the bottom one backward. I sat there with my hand over my mouth. Fisk didn't invent the words, she said. He inherited a mistake. Somebody heard 4 bodies at the gate and thought it was a supply order. She tapped the paper. It's a head count. He lost 3. He's the one that remains. He's been asking for 64 years for somebody to bring his crew back to 4, and we've been standing at a gate telling him we already did. 2,000 times. We have him. We're transporting. And now he's got a name, I said. Now he's got a name. She stood up and buttoned her coat, and I understood that she'd made whatever decision she'd made before she walked in. I'm putting in for a transfer in the spring. Not because of you, because I'm the only one he's asked for, and I don't trust myself to keep saying no from 22 minutes away. She went to Region in April. Fire ecology, 3 states over. We talk maybe once a month. And she asks about the Cutter water system, and I ask about her mother. And neither of us says the name of the trail. Before she left, she gave me the orange and gray jacket back. She'd never turned it in. She said she'd tried 3 times to drive to Belcross with it and couldn't do it. And she said, "You've been sitting with this longer. You figure out what it's for." It's in my truck, behind the seat, in a dry bag. 14 months now. The calls are down to 2 or 3 a month, which is where they were before all of it. Same patient. Male, 12, respirations 9. He doesn't say send Reyes anymore. He stopped about 6 weeks after she cleared the district, which tells you he keeps a roster and he keeps it current. He asks for 4 bodies at the gate. And I go out there and stand at the bumper, and I give him the words, because I looked at Rule 3 from every angle, and there isn't a version where I stop lying to him that doesn't end with somebody walking up that corridor. So I signed for a delivery I never received. 2, 3 a month. 27 years now. Dell died in February. Pneumonia, not this. I gave the reading at the service, and I did not tell his daughter about Rule 3. The vendor report is still framed in Ronnie's office. Teo's 12 now, and takes his sister's pulse for fun, and doesn't remember the man on the watch, Kirby made permanent. And he asks me about the Ammon cut about twice a year. And twice a year I tell him unstable slope. And one of these days, I'm going to have to take him out to that gate on a Tuesday and hand him a thing I don't understand. Because that's how it moves. Not through secrets, through boredom and forms, and men who mean well. 2 weeks ago, I did the routine. 3rd day, first light, out Forest Road 240, 22 minutes of washboard, headlights on the sign. The sign was new. Not vandalized. not replaced by the county I'd have gotten the invoice. A proper Forest Service closure sign. Brown fiberglass, routed white letters, mounted on the same 2 posts, with the same 2 carriage bolts, weathered like it had been there 9 years. It said, Trail 12 closed, unstable slope, no entry. And under that, routed in the same white letters, in the same font, dead level, spaced by somebody who had studied a lot of our signs. Crew of 4, required beyond this point. I stood in my headlights for a long time. Then I got the handheld out, and I said the 6 sentences, and I said them clean. And at the end of it, the alder went quiet the way it does. The old sign was leaned against the gatepost, face out, with the peeling O enclosed. He'd taken it down carefully. He hadn't broken anything. He'd just made a correction, the way you would if you'd been reading somebody's paperwork for 64 years and had finally figured out how to answer it. I've got the replacement order in my drawer. $240, 6-week lead time. I keep not sending it.